Joshua, is this tit for tat between Israel and Iran? Are you getting the sense we could put it on pause at least for a while?
Yes, restraint seems to be the word that's on everybody's lips in Washington. There's an effort to keep this to de-escalate after we've seen weeks of escalation. I think everybody in the international community wants this to come to an end. Both Iran does, and I think the Israelis are also agreeing to perhaps quite a bit of American pressure not to escalate.
There's this sense that Israel simply wanted to send a message to the Iranians that they have the ability to strike inside Iranian soil. But as you know, Joshua, Israel has done this type of thing inside Iran before.
Yes, it has. And this was an attack, we believe, at an air base where some of these drones had been sent, and possibly where there's manufacture of drones in Isfahan as well, letting Iran know that it could attack its manufacturing base for these drones. And there's also a nuclear plant in Isfahan as well. So it could go either way. Israel's indicating that it can do a lot more. And I think that everybody in Washington was very gratified that none of the missiles, the 300 missiles sent from Iran to Israel, arrived and actually penetrated. Most of them were shot down before they penetrated Israeli space. And America is taking a lot of credit for this. And I think it's trying to do it's trying to approach the UAE and Saudi Arabia and others and say, look what we can do for you. Join us and let's build this security umbrella over your countries as well as Israel.
Well, let me move on to Antony Blinken's statement at the G7 in Italy. The reaction seems to be rather muted. It's muted in Israel. The Iranians are completely downplaying the whole thing. And Blinken, I found his response quite bizarre, to be honest with you. He said the United States has not been involved in any offensive operations when asked about the strike inside Iran by the Israelis. But he also said, but certainly the United States was notified about this strike. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, it does seem. He is being very careful with his words, as you note. He's trying to suggest that America did not encourage this, but clearly America was told what was happening. And I think many of the generals that have been interviewed in Washington have been saying that they thought it was appropriate. So it's quite clear that the United States wants it both ways in this. It wants to take credit, but it also wants to suggest that it is warning Israel not to do more things.
Well, what I found interesting, Joshua, while Blinken didn't say much about the Israeli strike in Iran, he had plenty to say, plenty about Iran's attack over the weekend on Israeli soil.
Yes, you know, this is an election cycle here in the United States. Iran is the chief enemy of the United States. Being pro-Israel is extremely good for Biden and the election circuit, and particularly for raising money. He has raised more money in this election cycle than any president at this time in this early part, because elections are still 6 months away. But he has almost $200 million in his war chest, much more than President Trump, than candidate Trump, and that's, you know, this is positioning for United States elections, and being anti-Iran is very popular in America. Both parties are pushing ahead on this, as we saw today at Columbia University. Perhaps your viewers didn't see it, but many students were suspended, kicked out of the university, or at least suspended for a time being, and then arrested by the New York police in order to quiet their demands for peace in Palestine and a ceasefire there. So the climate in the United States is very much with Israel and against Iran, at least amongst politicians.
Yeah, I got to finally ask you, Joshua, about the vote we saw at the UN Security Council. The United States, once again, the only country to veto a resolution that would have paved the way for full United Nations membership for Palestine.
Yes, and oddly enough, a State Department spokesperson who was asked if this meant that America didn't support a independent Palestinian state, he said no. Voting against a Palestinian state and membership of Palestine in the UN is not voting against a Palestinian state. So it was, this is extremely difficult for the State Department to explain why they would be in favor of a two-state solution, as they say they are, but not want Palestinian to be recognized as a state, is a little bit head-scratching, I'm afraid.
Yes, we've seen a number of things like that at the United Nations by the United States. Joshua Landis, thank you, as always.
Pleasure.